A goal, Chris Billy, Huddersfield Town. The most famous goal of Chris Billy's life.
Is this the moment for Lee Fowler? It is. Take your place in Division 2, Huddersfield Town.
Ruby and Steve Simonson's boots now. He's missed. Steve Simonson clears the frame of the goal and collapses in a heap of tears. Huddersfield Town are promoted.
Mustafa Schindler has a chance to write his name in Huddersfield Town legend. And he takes that chance!
Hello and welcome to the Andy Takes That Chance podcast. 225 review shows, and for the first time, Huddersfield Town have lost to non-league opposition in a competitive game. However, it's certainly not the first time Town have lost in the first round of a cup competition in that period. So, as the leaves fall from the trees, Town fans are asking, will the wheels fall off the Town bus, or is this just a blip on the way to promotion like it was back in 2003-2004? Joining myself, Matt Shaw, to look back over the weekend's game is a man who contacted me directly to arrange a group therapy session for him. For he's also cursed to follow two teams in blue and white stripes who love throwing in ropey weekends. Welcome back to the podcast, Dom Howson. You all right, Dom?
Oh, yeah, very good. Thank you for that introduction.
No worries. You may have noticed as well that there was no post-match recovery show for Tamworth. So, to punish the man responsible, we've brought in Joel Granger to happily discuss the weekend shenanigans. So this is your punishment, Joel, for the lack of a post-match recovery. So welcome to this. I think this might be your first go on the main pod, is it?
Yeah, I think it is. Yeah.
There we go. Welcome aboard.
Thank you.
And finally, get your snacks ready, because if you feed the yak, he will draw. Back on the podcast once more. It's Tom Bradshaw. There's a lot of rhyme in there. Well, you're right, Tom.
Love that, Matt. Yeah, lovely to be back on, and what a game to be discussing. Jesus.
Feed the yak and he will draw. I love that. Yeah, so happy times for us. Welcome back. And it's Tamworth 1, Huddersfield 0. Not a lot of people saw this coming, I think, especially when we picked the team. I don't think anyone looked at that team at the start, really. I know Huddersfield Town can always throw in a few dodgy ones here and there, but I don't think anyone thought that we'd get outplayed by a team who 2,000 days ago were in the Southern League Premier Division Central, which is the 7th tier of English football. And Huddersfield back then were fighting to get in the Premier League, thanks to the official FA Cup Twitter feed for rubbing that stat in. The team on paper seemed fine to me. Not sure anyone had a particular problem with it. Although I do have textual evidence that I felt the front two were very, very capable of failing to turn up for a game like that. But it was more than just that, Mr. House. And it was, I'd say, just going to the team selection. I don't think when we looked at it, I think everyone just thought, yeah, that's all right.
Yeah, I think so. The only change that I would have made potentially would have been Ladapo for Danny Ward, just to have given him a game. But that team, it just should have been more than strong enough to get the job done. There's just no sugarcoating it. And you mentioned it on the pod last week about Accrington of 2003, and just so
you have to do it when Phil's on. You've got to throw that in.
It was, and I know he hated you throwing that in, but it was, wasn't it? Just 21 years on, it was repeat, rinse and repeat. It was. This was worse for the fact that Town actually played with 11 men. For pretty much the whole match. At least there was a bit of an excuse for Accrington, but yeah, I think maybe we'd be talking about a comfortable Town win if Tom Upenda had put them ahead. I think in that first half chance they had that the keeper saved, but I can't think of any positives that came out of it at all for me. There was nothing. It was just such a bad performance, and you just sort of saw it coming, didn't you? The build up, the fact it was on the BBC.
That's what they were there for.
Yeah, it was, and Town gave the BBC exactly what they wanted, which was the cup shop. And
Charity FC.
Charity FC. It was, wasn't it? But no, Tamworth. I mean, you got to credit them. They play to their strengths. and they were direct. They bullied Town, and the long throw, you could just see it coming, couldn't you? That they were going to get some joy from it. And I know we'll come to the goal probably later on, but there was like an inevitability about it that Town never just seemed comfortable all night from the high ball. But it just goes to show, doesn't it, when like Michael Duff had said, hadn't he, that the preparation and everything and the build up to it, they trained on plastic pitches, they'd studied numerous Tamworth matches, so they should have known what was going to come, but they just didn't look up for it, did they? They just didn't look prepared, and they got what they deserved.
Absolutely. Joel, me, you, and David Hartrick were pretty much the three-man flag wavers for Tom Yapenda, aren't we? We're big fans of Tom Yapenda. It was great to see him play. I mean, as Dom mentions there, if he scores early on, and it kind of falls to him, and he reacts really well to it. It's a good save from the keeper. But he probably should score. But Yapenda on the field, it was a chance for him to sort of really stake a claim, because when he's played before, he's been very, very good, hasn't he? And he's looked like he's going to force his way into the team eventually. I think that was probably the only selection whereby, I mean, there was nothing left field whatsoever, was it? But that was probably the only one where you could kind of go, oh, Tom Yapenda's playing. That's a slight surprise, but it was pretty strong. And I mean, Tom Yapenda himself probably, I think he had one run, didn't he, in the second half, where he sort of opened his legs, metaphorically speaking, and drove through the middle of the pitch. And that was the only time really that we saw much of him, wasn't it? And not to pull Tom Yapenda out, because he's the kid here. He needs to be brought up by. I mean, he's got so many experienced pros next to him who should be raising him up rather than him raising them up. But it was just a bit disappointing for him, wasn't it, in a way? Because we thought next time he gets a chance, he's going to really take this and he's going to really drive on. And I mean, it wasn't bad, was it? It just didn't quite work for him today, or Friday, did it?
No, I think you're right. I was maybe slightly surprised to see him start, I have to say, because I think everyone knew what sort of challenge Tamworth were going to pose. They were going to be a physical threat and they were going to try and make life difficult for us. So I think, if anything, this was maybe a game for the men rather than for the boys. So I was maybe surprised to see Yapenda start. But, he's not small, is he? He's a physical lad. He's 6'3" or whatever. But if you look at that Tamworth midfield, especially that Tonks, the bloke who ended up scoring with that ridiculous throw-in, he must be about 100 kilograms. He's built like a tradesman. He's absolutely massive. So I wasn't really too surprised, actually, to see Yapenda get bullied. And yeah, he had his moments, but I think on that pitch, he's going to struggle to do what he does best, which is sort of have the ball at his feet and move with it, because it's an unfamiliar surface for a player like him. So yeah, it's difficult, but I'm sure he'll have another chance and he'll come back stronger.
Absolutely. I mean, it's hopefully he's one of those characters where an experience like that will just make him better and hungrier, which is it. Tom, Dom's talked about the pitch. Town trained at Bradford Park Avenue's surface, didn't they? I mean, we've all played on a pitch like that. It's a community surface. I noticed halfway through the first half the pitch wasn't good. It was like the football was like a Mexican jumping bean at points, especially when it landed. It was spinning all over the place, wasn't it? It was really unpredictable, a lot of the bounces. But you can't use that as an excuse, can you? At all. I mean, it's the same for both teams. I know they're going to be more used to it than what we are, but without using it as an excuse, it was a bit of a leveler in many ways, and it did bring the two teams closer together, I thought. And as the home team in the FA Cup, you have to use every 1% that you possibly can. But that pitch sort of definitely brought the two teams closer together, didn't they, in terms of quality? And Town just really struggled. I mean, there were certain things that you can't blame the pitch for. I mean, Town had about almost double figures corners, didn't they, in that first half, which were floated straight into the goalkeeper's arms, which was infuriating. And then you can excuse Jaheim Headley running up the left wing a couple of times and just running out of play with the ball. That's not the pitch. But having said that, it was a difficult surface, wasn't it? You could see it was difficult, and players were uncomfortable, and they were taking another touch, and it just kind of killed a lot of Town's go forward, didn't it? And like I say, it's not an excuse whatsoever, but did, like I say, it did bring them.
Yeah, probably. I mean, Tamworth will obviously play on that pitch a lot at home, and when you look at the National League now, there's a lot of plastic pitches. It didn't as this is no excuse at all, because for me it's still a flat surface. It's not bobbly and wet with puddles everywhere. The thing that I did notice a lot, the bounce was pretty bad, wasn't it? But it's it didn't look like a good 4G either. It did look a bit tired. So look, it's a
like
terrible.
my garden, to be fair.
It's an absolutely terrible excuse to bring up for these footballers, though. Like they should still be putting in a better shift in that game, regardless of the pitch. That was the overall disappointment for me. Was the effort there. I mean, do
you think the players used it as an excuse in a way, or maybe they used it as an excuse for a performance like that?
Possibly, Matt. I don't know if it was because I don't think Town particularly started that bad. No. I don't think we looked like we were nervous on the pitch. I think we had a lot of the ball at start. We were getting forward quite well. There was that you've already mentioned Lependa chance, the Radders chance at the back post that he should be slotting in from a yard out. Like Town actually looked all right at the start, and then that goal just froze it. But yeah, pitch wise, come on, it's no excuse if the players could maybe say that exactly. Play the game, don't matter. So it's a flat green surface, isn't it?
And to be honest, it did look like my Christmas tree, because it looked like it gleamed in certain places as well, and it had like the little white bits on there, which for the snow and stuff. And at one point, I was like, "It's like my Christmas tree, is that?" Town, like I say, Town had those early chances, didn't they? Ollie Turton had a really good chance, didn't he? And Ollie Turton's not really a go forward kind of player, is he? And he's not the. But he perhaps could have done better. Tom Upenda could have done better. I think there's a header, isn't there, that in the first half from one of the set pieces that should potentially end up on target as well. And Ben Wiles hits it hard across the far stick, where Bojan, it was neither a shot or a cross really, and Bojan slides in and can't make the contact. But after that, Town were just abject, weren't they? And that's where the goal comes in. I mean, the goal, we can debate whether this is a foul, and to be honest, it probably is. But I don't really want it to be given as a foul either, if that makes sense. The long throw comes in, and we'd done okay with the long throw up to that point. I don't think we'd struggled too much. Tom Lees and Lonvik had dealt with it from that side, and then it came in right. I think he got a little bit closer, and I think the time they calculated at 32 yards, and he stuck it straight on Chris Maxwell. And I mean, there's the striker there, who was a pain in the backside, and credit to him for that. And that's not a negative slant. He was a pain for us all weekend because he was physical, all Friday night because he was physical, and it was difficult. And he kind of like swings a fist, doesn't he, at Maxwell? I mean, does it make a lot of contact? Debatable. But the man in front, Bojan Radulovic, the guy has his arm around Bojan's neck, and he's pretty much wrestling him to the ground. I mean, that's a free kick. But by the same token, Chris Maxwell should be punching that. I mean, we joked last week about Phil Senior and the goal against Accrington, but I mean, Chris Maxwell must have been listening, because he's let Phil completely off the hook there, hasn't he? Now Phil's like, there's nothing Phil could do compared to that. He should be doing so much better with that, even whether there's fouls going on ahead of him. It's disappointing for an experienced keeper to do that, and I mean, it happens, doesn't it? These things do happen. But it's just a shame when it's on national TV and everyone and all the wolves are there looking for you to make these mistakes, and you oblige. It's just a bad goal. I mean, for them it's great, isn't it? Because their game plans worked, and that's exactly what they wanted to do, bits and pieces in the box. But for us, we look at it and we go, yeah, that's a foul, but he's been a little bit soft really as well. And it's that fight, isn't it, that we needed to take there, and I think that goal kind of encapsulates the lack of fight Town had on the day as much as anything.
Yeah, definitely. No, it was a horrendous goal, and you might have a point on Radulovic, was he fouled? But for me, goalkeepers get way too much protection as it is, and Maxwell has to be stronger there. You know, he's punched it into his own net. That's what ended up happening. You've got to come out and dominate your area. And I think you're seeing it in the Premier League, aren't you? At the moment, where Spurs are conceding a lot of goals from set pieces, and that's down to the opposition have spotted the weakness in Vicario, that he's not very good at coming off his line and it's really dominating that sort of 6-yard box. And we've then seen it at this level with Chris Maxwell, where I thought his kicking all night, his distribution was woeful, and you could again look at the pitch and say that's a factor. But Town was so careless throughout, even in the first half, and you reeled off some of those chances before that they created, Matt. But at the same time, they were so wayward with the passing. And I think that comes down to the intensity and the tempo and the fact that they just did not match Tamworth up for wanting it and how hungry they were. And you got to remember, Tamworth are semi-professional. They're 16th in the in the National League. They weren't in great form. They've had an amazing couple of years, but Town went into it 5 matches unbeaten. So we're thinking that it's not going to be straightforward, but Town should surely have enough to progress. I mean, you sort of feel marginally better that Wrexham went out, over the weekend. But, Birmingham went, was it to Sutton, and did the job. And that's what Town should have been capable of doing when they've made changes. But that was a really strong 11 still. That comes down to attitude and application, and goes back to everything that you guys, we've been talking about on the pod, of it's the mentality shift.
So much
complacency. It's the mentality shift that is going to take, I think, maybe longer than people realise to shift, of this losing culture that's set in for years at Town. And it's going to take time for Michael Duff to extinguish it, and it might take multiple transfer windows. And at the moment, I know Town are 7th in League One, but if Kevin Nagle seriously thinks that promotion's an absolute certainty this season, to me, that's wrong. At the moment, Town aren't playing like a team who are capable consistently. They're not playing consistently like a team who could finish in the top 2. Playoffs, potentially, you'd think with the squad, the injured players to come back, that top 6, the playoffs is the absolute bare minimum. But at the minute, I'm not seeing a team that is nailed on for automatic promotion. Far from it.
Apart from Birmingham, yeah. I mean, you look at the rest of the league, and I think second is genuinely there for the taking for someone.
I said the same, I did. But at the moment, I just think Town are too up and down, though. And Michael Duff said it, hasn't he? About there's the gap between when Town are good, and then the gap between when they're really poor, and they threw in the 2 dreadful home performances, Northampton, Blackpool, back to back. Right, that has to be cut out. I still think Town are going to go on a long unbeaten run this season.
It's a Duff thing, isn't it? That those unbeaten runs. I mean, Town are bad, aren't they, Dom? When they go 1 goal down, that's when Town mentally don't get it together. And it happened here, and it was. We've done it this season and we've recovered quite well, but we've also done it this season like against Northampton and really dealt with it poorly, very poorly. And that was something that's happened the last few years. When we go, Neil, who often comes on the pod, calls it one and done. And it's been a sort of issue with Town throughout the years, is that if we concede first, then we invariably struggle. That second half, though, like you say, like Dom says, Joel, Tamworth are a semi-pro team. A lot of them were at work till 4 or 5 o'clock before they turned up for a game of football, and Town were napping. And like Michael Duff said afterwards, they're having a nap in the hotel room. These guys are working, and then they turn up and they put far more in, and they deserve it so much, and they deserve so much credit for it as well, because they completely deserved their win. And I think that's what pisses Huddersfield fans off, is that Tamworth deserved to beat us on the day. That we can't sit here and say, "Oh, we missed this chance, we missed that chance, we hit the woodwork, we did this, we did that." We didn't. We got beat, quite fair and square. And I think that's why there was some anger in the away end, and especially towards that second half, which was just such a non-event. Every set piece just seemed to be floated into the keeper's arms. There's no real fight in that second half. And Town are, like we mentioned, complacency. They're just so capable of throwing these performances in with regularity, and that's just. I think this is part of the frustration with the team. It's like just as you're getting on board with players, and I don't really want to name any particular, but once you get on board with players who've let you down before and they're just starting to pick up again, they throw that in, and you're just like, well, it just knocks the stuffing out of Town fans, and it leads to that mistrust in the team, doesn't it? That people can't quite get behind, and it's essentially just. It's like I did the meme the other week. Where it's like Sideshow Bob from The Simpsons, where he steps on the rakes all the time. And it's just like that's just like Town this season, isn't it? Just stepping on rakes every now and then. It's an old meme, Joel, but it's frustrating that second half, wasn't it? Sum it up for us, because in fact you might not even need to sum it up because just nothing happened.
No, I mean, you talk about like adversity and us going 1-0 down and us having absolutely nothing. We've seen it time and time again, and that second half, it happened again. We've got 0 match winners in that team. Not one person who was on that pitch against Tamworth was capable of creating something from nothing. I'd say we've got one player who can do that at the entire club, and that's Josh Koroma. He's been injured and presumably wasn't, risked on that pitch. He's the only one. We saw it against Northampton where he scored and then won the penalty. He's the only one who can kind of put us on his back and create something out of nothing and really drag us up. I'm a big fan of Ben Wiles, but I don't think he's really got that in his locker. He fluffed quite a good chance in the second half quite late on where he flashed it across the post. As much as I've kind of raved on social media about Marshall and Bojan, they're kind of players who, for me, I see them more as they're going to contribute to a win, but they're not really going to drag you up from 2-0 down.
Talisman, is there?
Yeah, exactly. And then you kind of look around the rest of the team. We had Eop Ender on the pitch, a young lad. You can't expect anything from him. Kasumu, again, he's scored 2 goals in his entire career at Town. And then you're looking out at the wing backs. It's Ollie Turton and Jaheim Headley, who was then replaced by Mikael Miller. And Duff said he was kind of playing with an injury or something. I can't quite remember what Duff said.
An illness, I think. Was it an illness or something?
Yeah, an illness or something maybe. But so you look at that and you think, who is really going to get this equaliser? Who's going to get the winner? And who's going to win us this tie? No one.
It's a sort of frustrating period, isn't it? There's the argument, isn't it? You're creating a team rather than an individual there, isn't there? But you're right, isn't it? That there's no one there that you would look at and go, dig us out here. We don't have that one player, do we, who you can sort of think he'll dig us out with a goal or he'll dig us out with an assist or a 25-yard. Ben Wiles is the closest to Koroma at the minute, with 5 goals, 2 assists. That's decent from Ben Wiles. But Anthony Evans may, from a set piece, but he didn't get on the field either. And I think going back to Chris Maxwell as well, I think I have to kind of stick up for Chris Maxwell a little bit just to be balanced. And that's, he's not played as he this season much. He's obviously going to be rusty, and I don't think that probably happens if he's played 10 games this season. So just to try and balance that in Chris Maxwell's favour from the goal as well. But I'm just so disappointed with that. And Town's cup record, Tom. Is there a worse team in the Football League than Huddersfield Town in cup competitions? I'm not going through everybody's cup record. I'm not that sad. I'm pretty sad, but I'm not that sad. Huddersfield Town's cup record is a disgrace. And this is not on the current players, not on the current owner or manager or anything. It's a historical thing. We are shit in cups, honestly. We're good in playoffs. Cups, awful. We've been... I just did a quick tally up before we came on, and I've counted the last 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years. I couldn't be bothered going back any further. Do you know how many? That's 18. I don't count the Bristol Street Motors. I don't count. But in terms of the League Cup and the FA Cup, Town have played 18 matches. How many of those do you think they've won?
Probably 6, something like that, 6 or 7.
4. and one of those was one of those was a penalty shootout against Sheffield Wednesday in the League Cup. The record is horrendous. Until this season, when we beat Morecambe in the League Cup, in the previous 6 years, we'd only one season where we'd won a cup game. It's just, and that's in the 21-22 season when Carlos Corberán was head coach, and we beat Burnley in the FA Cup, which was a good day. And then Barnsley, where Matty Pearson did the biggest dive you'll ever see to get Barnsley's equaliser disallowed. It's phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. Town have been knocked out of round one of both cups in the same season 5 times in the last 7 seasons. It's shocking. It's really bad.
It's pretty embarrassing as well when you think that come a week, next week, if they don't beat Man United's under 21s, they'll be out of all cup competitions by mid-November.
It's
bad.
When
you think that FA Cup, you'd have thought, Town should still, if they get 2 decent draws, they get to the 3rd round. Yeah, they should be capable at least of getting to the 3rd round, getting to January. And then the Bristol Street Motors getting knocked out in the group stages if they can't beat Man United's under 21s. Yeah, this is what it's come to. Town's lousy cup record.
I'm not that bothered about the Bristol Street Motors, but I might be if we lose to Man United under 21s, because nobody really loses to the under 21s. I mean, if we sort of get knocked out and we say we're not taking it seriously, we concentrate on the league, I might go, all right, fair enough from that. Because no one likes that cup until you find out you're in the final by accident, and then everyone loves the cup.
But I said at the start of the season on here, though, Matt, that I still thought that competition was important for the same reason as you look at the FA Cup tie. That's a chance to give some of the fringe players or youngsters like a Yorpender and Headley, etc. They should be playing in that, and so you want to try and go as deep as you can. And that's why I said Town should have been looking at that competition and the league. There's no reason why they shouldn't be going deep. So it would be pretty bad if they go out next week for me. It'd be a shame, that's for sure. In terms of squad rotation, trying to get into good habits and building momentum, everything going into the second half of the season. I know what you're saying about it only livens up and gets interesting when you get to the semi-finals and the final and when you're close to Wembley. But that's it. There's an opportunity to get to Wembley.
You're right. It's good for keeping players sharp, that you might need and things like that. And it's good for breaking youngsters through. In terms of taking it seriously, I don't until you get to the until you get to the semi-final. Then okay. Town haven't been to a quarter-final of an FA Cup or League Cup since 1972. That's 52 years since we got to a quarter-final. And I mean, Huddersfield aren't Man United or Man City, but it's still a really bad record. And I mean, winning 4 of our last 18 cup games. Bear in mind, you only lose technically 2. This is League and FA Cup. That's only 2 a season practically. And one of those was a draw anyway against Sheffield Wednesday. It's depressing. I mean, it's pretty depressing. Our cup. We said for years our cup record's really bad. And I think at one point we used to throw in the odd 5th round FA Cup and get to away at Chelsea and stuff, didn't we? And we had some pretty good runs at one point. But it's pretty bad. I don't think there's a worse cup side in England. There can't be.
No,
it really can't be. There probably is. To be fair, but it's. I mean,
League Cup especially, Matt. I don't think I can't remember last time we really got past first round at League Cup.
We've never. I think we've been to the semi-final of the League Cup once, and we lost to Arsenal over 2 legs in the late 60s. I think that's the furthest we've ever got in that. But we are pretty bad. Even when we got promoted in 16-17, Tom, we lost in the first round away at Shrewsbury, didn't we? Yeah. Ivan Porovic in midfield and what have you. I mean, we are pretty bad. We are pretty bad in the cups, and I think a lot of Town fans have kind of conditioned to the League Cup part. They just don't take it seriously just because we get knocked out so quickly. I mean, the other year we got knocked out to Rochdale, which was pretty bad. Remember we lost to Rochdale, didn't we, in 2021? That was pretty bad. Lost 1-0 at home. I think that was a COVID game, wasn't it? And that wasn't amazing. But I mean, some FA Cup memories as well. It's like you don't really have that many great memories of the FA Cup. I remember in the late 90s. Don might remember this. Do you remember the Derby game? We played Derby, and there was about 23,000 actual people, not a gate, but an actual attendance. There's around 23,500 against Derby. and we drew 2-2. I think it might have been 98, and Chris Beach scored twice, I think, for us in that game, and that was just brilliant. And we lost the replay. And Derby were Premier League at the time.
Beach scored in the replay. I think we lost.
Yeah, he did.
I think we went ahead and then we lost 3-1, didn't we?
What's his name? Was it Francisco Baiano or something?
Yeah,
the striker. Yeah, but yeah, happy memories. I mean, I remember going to the League Cup away at Middlesbrough as a kid in the 90s, and they had Janino and Ravanelli and Emerson and Gianluca Festa. You know, this real international team, and they absolutely battered us. We lost 5-1, but we had a great we had a great day that day. And Andy Payton scored, and I think we celebrated like we'd won the League Cup. It was pretty good memories. But Wimbledon as well in the 90s when we were on Match of the Day, and I think we drew 2-2 at home, and we could have got to the quarterfinal of the FA Cup that day, but Wimbledon scored in like the 95th minute because
Effinikoku.
Yeah, and there was a very popular Huddersfield Town player who we love and has been on the podcast a number of times, and he does talk about it in one of the episodes. Doesn't run to the corner flag to keep the ball, and he loses it, and they go up the other end and win a corner, and that's one of the nicest men in football, Ian Dunn. But we still forgive him because he's such a legend. He's done it. But there's slim pickings for cups. So much so I've got nothing else to say on the cup.
But those players, just to go on this Tamworth game, can I just do me 2 pence of this?
Go for it.
Those players won't look at Town's history and be in the back of their head like, oh, we're going, bit of voodoo over this, we're rubbish in the cup. The thing that really got to me on Friday night was Tamworth, for me, didn't look like they had to break a sweat, especially that second half. Tamworth, like, absolutely credit to Tamworth for doing that job and doing what they did. And obviously, they probably played a bit above a level potentially, but I just don't think we made them work for it as much as we could have, and that's what disappointed me the most. And like you said, the last kind of 20 minutes with some of those deliveries into the box, just absolutely embarrassing. Absolutely, just really. I'd have accepted that 1-0 loss if I thought, bloody hell, that keeper's made some amazing saves at the end there. Town could have scored 3 or 4, but the defenders have kept him in it. The keepers kept him in it. But I didn't get that feeling. I mean, luckily I wasn't there, but like we said off air, Pozza and Johnny were there, and they were fuming after that game.
Town's set pieces were appalling, and you're like, yeah, Tom's so right. Like the delivery, like in the second half, it was like the goalkeeper was magnet to the ball. Like, and Town weren't cute.
6-yard box though.
The Town weren't cute. Yeah, the Town weren't even cute enough to like have
who's on the keeper
around him. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like just basics of where can we not stick Matty Pearson on it, or Tom Lees? Like that's where I think it comes down to decision making from the players. Like to me, Friday night wasn't on Duff; it was on the players. Like they've just completely underperformed and frozen. That's just so baffling when you think that maybe they're starting to turn a corner here and go on a decent run again. But I think Joel made an excellent point before about when you're looking at the Town squad, there is only one player that will get you on the edge of the seat, and that is Josh Koroma. And it was crying out for Josh Koroma to come on, but clearly Michael Duff didn't fancy him on the plastic pitch or didn't think he was ready. And to be honest, I have no qualms with that. Like Town should have been winning that without Josh Koroma needing to come on. And Josh Koroma is going to be way more important for the rest of the season. So we don't need him getting injured. But that to me comes back to where's the fun in this Town squad? There isn't.
I'd say, Dom.
We're just getting turned into, and this is nothing against stuff. It's going to be, if Town get promoted, it's going to be a functional team of grafters and organisation and discipline. And I think that's not going to bring the fans back. The 4,000 plus season ticket holders that aren't coming. Right. This football isn't going to bring the fans back, and that's the issue that Michael Duff has got. It's the style. This style is not going to blow people away. And so Town, as soon as the results dry up, this is then when the questions come.
Yeah, that game on Friday is Town win that game with a couple of proper. Look, Koroma knows that level. He knows that like kind of National League flair you need. I mean, you saw Thomas would have had a laugh there on Friday night because he knows what to do at that level. You know those type of players at that level who have just got a bit of skill, bit of pace, try something different. That was a great point, Dom. The kind of it's just so conservative in the structure and a bit robotic. I think that's possibly what didn't do us any favour. I thought Miller came on and actually and he did what he knows. He knows that. Who did he play for? Carl Charlton or someone? So similar levels to that. So like he knows what it takes to kind of beat players at that level and what you've got to do. And he comes on, runs at people, wins a couple of corners. I think that is massively what we missed. But regardless of that, those players that were on the bloody pitch should be doing better. But
you know, even with Miller, I like Miller, and he's been a good signing, and he's definitely an upgrade on what we had at left wing back.
Delivery though, man.
But he came on the other day and he made a bit of an impact. So showed more than most of the guys that started.
He's at it, isn't he? Which you like?
Yeah, he is. He's energetic. He's busy, and when Sorensen's fit on the other side, you could say the same. But neither of them can get. They can't. They're not going to beat players with trickery or like electric pace. And this is where Town are one-paced. And so if you don't have Koroma on the pitch for a bit of magic at the top end, where's it going to come from? It's going to be a long-range strike at the moment from either Evans, more likely to be Wiles, or it's going to be a set play. That at the moment, there haven't been that many wonderful team goals this season, have there, for Town? If you look across the piece, there's been a few times, especially at the start of the season, where when Sorensen was fit, you had great moves on the right of where there were triangles and there was good movement off the ball. But by and large, the patterns of play, it's going to be a bit limited as it's not a quick team. It's just not, isn't it? There's not a lot of pace there, and so Duff has to sort of find a way of winning with the players that he has, and of course we've got 5 or 6 big players out, so it's not easy for him.
I think you look at the Barnsley team, Dom, and the way Michael Duff got his team to play, he condensed them really narrowly, didn't he? Like from the defence to the attack, he would condense them into that midfield box, but he would have people with speed at the back, so they weren't caught by that diagonal all the time, which Town do get caught. And they used to have a striker up front like Devante Cole, who was quick, who would get behind, so they would out from that. And you kind of look at
when you're looking at but when you're saying the differences between us and the Barnsley team as well, I'd say our back three is slower than his Barnsley back three that he had, and have Town got as good as technicians in midfield as what he had at Barnsley? I don't think they do. We've got more workers.
Kane, hasn't he? But
Kane. But again, Kane's very
Connell
up
was
and down
Connell
at the
was
minute.
good.
Yeah, and then who they had? Who was the other? They had Kane, and then who were the other two? Phillips, and they're still there, aren't they? But they were excellent in the year that they got to the playoff final. I wouldn't say Town's midfield three is as good as that on the ball from what we've seen so far this season. Maybe over time might get there. But we don't even know what his best three would be if everybody was fit. That's the other
they've
factor.
struggled with the shape, haven't they? I think that's another thing because of the slower defense. They've struggled with the shape because he's wanted to play 1-6 and 2-8s, hasn't he? Really, but he's had to sort of revert to 2-6 and a 10, if you like. Which I think he would like to play Kasumu, Wiles, and Evans, but it's just not quite worked. And when we were playing those triangles you mentioned on the right-hand side, Dom, at the start of the season, it was mostly Sorensen and Evans, wasn't it, who would sort of orchestrate that. And maybe Brodie Spencer would add to that on the flank. But we have to wait, don't we, until they all come back. Not a lot of happiness on this podcast. So I think what we'll do is we'll maybe speak to someone who's a little bit happier than us. And we have spoke to Graham from the Tamworth FC Social podcast. And this is what he had to say on the game on Friday night.
Well, from a Tamworth perspective, it it really means everything for the club. It's been some years since we've made some progression beyond the first round of the FA Cup. I think it's about 10 years ago that we last did, and I believe that was one of the last time we were obviously in the conference. So yeah, it was a huge night. And commiserations to Huddersfield. Interesting, really. In a way, I feel like Tamworth almost brought Huddersfield down a level. It almost felt like it turned into a bit of a National League game, or at least how we've been playing some of our games this season. And it was a real leveler. That's how it felt to me. Which was, it's strange, really. But I think that we did say before the game that the crowd being close, the narrow pitch. Obviously, there's been a lot of talk around the 4G pitch as well being something that Tamworth can use to their advantage. But I don't think it was all that. I think we put in a good performance, and I guess for whatever reason, sometimes professional players can stumble upon some of the things that they come up against, especially being outside of those comforts that they're not used to. And I think Tamworth just, I guess, had that extra 25% in them that made them just work that little bit harder. You could see how much it meant to the fans and the players, management and everything at the end. And it was good that Huddersfield manager complimented us as well. I thought that was a really nice touch from him. So yeah, it was a great occasion for us. Obviously not for you guys, but I'm sure you'll move on for it, draw a line, and just carry on with your season and trying to get back into the Championship. And we've got Burton Albion next, which is basically a local derby for us, which is brilliant for the FA Cup, and we've got to concentrate on staying in the National League.
Okay, and thanks to Graham for that. Do you know what, guys? If Tamworth hadn't beaten Huddersfield Town, I would be absolutely over the moon for them as a football club. It's quite a likeable club, isn't it? To be fair, I am actually quite pleased for them. It's just a shame they had to beat us, which is the really annoying thing. Because it's I thought they were a really, really decent football club. Really good. Really seemed a really good bunch of fans, didn't they? Pre and post match. I thought they were classy winners. They could have been. There's a lot of fans in football tend to be bad winners, but absolutely not of it with them. I really hope they get past Burton and get something pretty special in round 3, and I'll be cheering them on.
It's massive.
I'll be honest,
Matt, it's massive. It's massive for fans at that level. It is absolutely huge. Like, I mean, I might not living in Huddersfield anymore. I go watch Folkestone Invicta, who I think 2 leagues below Tamworth. They got really close a couple of seasons ago to getting through to that kind of first round proper, and it means so much to clubs like that, because you kind of, those memories, that night will fucking live in the history books for that club. And like I say, it's just a shame that it's against us, because I mean, we don't forget Accrington and Stanley. In 10 years we'll be talking about Tamworth.
Yeah. But I genuinely hope they go on and have a success in this. It's a nice club, nice fans. I genuinely really do wish them the best. So I'll be cheering them on against Burton, and hopefully that's on TV and we can watch Mr. Tonks sling it in, and hopefully Burton get done for I won't say done for a Burton. That'd be terrible. You get many people switching off if I do that. But all the best to Tamworth going forward, and that's genuine as well. Right. Okay. So Kevin Nagel usually gives us something to talk about, doesn't he? So I mean, he's thankfully Kev's reappeared on Twitter, and he's given us an extra. We've got an extra probably 15 minutes material now, thanks to the owner. The first tweet he's put rough day for both my teams. Sacramento knocked out of the playoffs on penalty kicks. Town knocked out by Tamworth. Nothing I can say to paper over either result. Just wanted supporters on both sides of the pond to know I see you and you deserve better. Now back to work. Perfect tweet. Absolutely fine. Perfect tweet. Ignore, as you know, from Mr. Nagel. And one response, I think somebody, and it was, I don't know if it's a real account or anything. It's one of those accounts with loads of numbers at the end, and I tend not to take those particularly seriously. And the response he tweeted there has caused a little bit of a storm in Twitter circles. Maybe it's a little that he can douse, but he then follows it up with, let's offer a bit of clarity. It's safe to say that not all of your best starting 11 played the match together. Look back on the preceding 5 matches to get a somewhat better feel for what that looks like. That does not even take into consideration injured players who will be back in the next 30 to 60 days. It was a horrible result and no excuse. Hats off to the competition. But we should not be booing our players and manager and telling them to FO after the match. Let's stick together. Whether you want to believe it or not, there will be better days. Let's move on and not dwell on it. Thanks. And I mean, the crux of that is fine, but there are certain things which people have taken exception to. And I think people do enjoy a chairman who speaks to them, hears them, sees them, but they also want a bit of consistency, I think, with what he says. I mean, Kevin Nagel blew his top at a kids' team, losing to Doncaster in the Bristol Street Motors Trophy. So it feels a bit out of sync with what he's previously said. Then Michael Duff, who I think's a great speaker, by the way, Michael Duff, and I'm a big fan of Michael Duff. I mean, people have made comments about the football being dull, not just you, Dom, and here, and it's true. But I think as a bloke, I think Michael Duff's great. I'm a fan. And he invited it at the start of the season. He said, "Look, if you want to boo anyone, boo me." That was one of his quotes, wasn't it, at the start of the season? Leave the players. Come have a go at me. I'm big enough to take it. And I thought that was great, to be honest, from Michael Duff. But he said that. He's pretty much invited that. And then the owners sort of like jumped in on them after Doncaster. And now he's right in a sense that people shouldn't really be screaming abuse at anyone, regardless if it's you shouldn't really conduct yourself in a way where you're abusive. And he's right in terms of that we've had a decent 5-match run. And it's a valid opinion to me, but he's made a rod for his own back a little bit by doing something similar himself. And I think as Town fans, we just need that consistency at the top. And like I say, I think the abuse is wrong. I think venting your spleen, saying it's rubbish, etc., fair enough. Boo, that's fair. You pay your money, etc. But because of the historical context, some fans are not particularly happy about being told how to support the club by an owner who's upset, if that makes sense. So I can see why there's been that kind of reaction and backlash to it, but at the same time, a bit tired of the sort of hysterics that Town fans are like a small section of Town fans are every time we lose a match, whether it's Birmingham or Tamworth, it's sort of the same voices with the same thing, and it's just getting a bit boring for me. But I just think Kevin sometimes doesn't quite help himself, and I think Town fans will analyze everything you say very in forensic detail at time, and you can put the perfect thing out there, 90 lines of the perfect thing. But if you put one thing which is questionable, they will jump on that and ignore the rest. And that's what football fans do in this country. I just kind of brushed it off and just went, yeah, what kind of thing. But a lot of people couldn't, Joel. And I kind of understand where they're coming from, but I failed to be that bothered by it at the same time, if that makes sense.
Yeah, completely. I mean, I took plenty of pelters on Twitter this week because I tweeted out after the game saying that I wasn't really bothered and Tamworth did a job on us, fair play to them, we move on. And I've got people in my comment section sort of questioning whether, I even care about the club. And I just think some people get far too angry and aggressive on social media. And you're right, they do nitpick everything people say. And it is only a small minority of people. But I think
it's the same people as well, isn't it? It's the same.
Yeah,
ones.
Yeah, it is. And Kevin tweets as kind of a fan, and I know he's the chairman, he's the owner, but the way he tweets, he's sort of said it before. He cares just like we do. He wants to see the best of the team. He puts out there on social media what he's thinking, and I appreciate that. I think there is a point maybe to be made that he shouldn't be saying whether the fans should be booing. I mean, telling the players to F off, I think it's pointless. But if you want to boo, boo. I've not been one for booing ever really, but I can understand why people do it. But I just think people do need to chill out, and we've had it already this season when we had that really horrendous run of form where, you know, there was just an absolute meltdown every week on Twitter. I saw someone this week say, anyone who can be sacked should be sacked because we'd lost to Tamworth in the first round of the Cup. Like, it's just such a Huddersfield Town fan thing to overreact, and we're going to see it again, I'm sure. But I do think it is really unnecessary.
It'd be me, Joel, if we lose to Wickham. Crawley, that's the next one, isn't it? Dom, as a journalist side of things, I mean, Kevin certainly gives journalists a lot to write about, doesn't he? I think the consistency, the messaging has always got to be consistent, I think, at the top. So I think if he's kicking off a kids team losing to Doncaster and then kicking off with the fans for being annoyed at losing to Tamworth in the FA Cup, which to be honest, is probably Town's worst ever result in the FA Cup, I would probably say. I remember, I think Town lost to, was it Colchester a long time in the 1930s or something, which was seen as a massive shock at the time. But I mean, you'd have to go back a long, long way, wouldn't you, to sort of see a result which would be classed as bad as that. So you kind of expect, but I mean, your thoughts on it, mate?
Kevin Nagle is consistent in that he's not going off Twitter or X anytime soon, and that he's going to carry on tweeting whatever he likes whenever he feels like tweeting, and that's his prerogative. It's absolutely. I've said my feelings before on that on here, and that I personally wouldn't be advising it, and you're opening yourself up to a can of worms like this sort of situation where you're writing something that's black and white, where you're saying to fans, you should not be booing the players. And his message is that it's about sticking together, but you can't tell fans how to feel. There were, I don't know how many Huddersfield fans travelled to Tamworth.
700 or so.
750. So 750 Huddersfield fans travelled to Tamworth on a Friday night for a game that was on telly, paying it's 5-hour round trip. Let's go with that, and then potentially hundreds of pounds on fuel, food, programs, merchandise, whatever, anything from there. So it's an expensive day, and so when the team then play as badly as they did, you've got to expect that there's going to be an angry reaction. That's not me condoning personal abuse or people swearing at players or Duff. And look, I get it. He's all about being positive all the time. But I'm afraid this club's been on a downward spiral for a long time. And so far, the evidence is that under his premiership, it's only gone one way. It's getting worse. So far, it's not got better yet, on the pitch. And so until the stadium deal gets done, you could argue it's not getting better off the pitch. So, we've got to be balanced about this, and it's fine. Like the Nagel, he can say what he likes, but I wouldn't have done that. Just putting more fuel on the fire for me by coming out and saying something like that. After defeat of the season, that's what it is. And so, if anything, I'd be keeping stum, and I'd be going, let Michael Duff take the flak for this. Let the players take the criticism. Yeah. Maybe that's what he's doing.
Yeah, I mean, it's what leaders do, don't they? In a way, they front up.
Football club in the last 18 months. There's no getting away from that. And maybe sometimes it's a tactic where he's shining light or taking the headlines himself. Maybe he's doing that. It's his way of viewing the world. I don't know, but I just wouldn't have advised him doing what he did the other day. And I don't think sometimes it's healthy to engage, with the criticism that you're going to get on social media. It's inevitable. I get it every single day, and for wasted time responding to every doom house and or stick I got, then I wouldn't have any time to do anything else for the rest of the day. So, yeah, I just think for me now it's a case of if I'm Mr. Nagel, I'd go into the background for a bit, let things pick up over the next couple of months, teams start climbing further up the table, hopefully getting close to that top 2, and put your money where your mouth is again in January and get a striker or 2 or a few players in January if you want to deliver to promotion this season. That's sort of the way I'm seeing it right now.
The breaking Kevin Nagel news is the Sacramento manager. There we go. So there we go. Breaking news for Kevin Nagel. I mean, I don't pay enough attention to Sacramento Republic to comment on that, to be honest. I mean, I wish them well, but if they were on TV, I'd probably watch a little bit of it, but I'm struggle to go past that, to be honest. Tom finishes off with that. I mean, there's Poz was wading in, wasn't he? Poz is at a football managers meeting tonight. Otherwise, he might have been on the podcast, which could have sparked it a different way. I might have had to cool him down. These gingers do get angry, don't they? But I mean, your thoughts on it? I mean, I understand where Kevin Nagel's coming from, but I understand where the fans are coming from as well. I think you've got every right to be, like Dom says, you've got every right to be annoyed at the match. You don't have a right to be abusive to people. That's just not.
Never.
That's just not. I mean, no one on this podcast would ever sort of say, "Yeah, he's right to call him this and that." He's not.
Yeah.
No, we'd never say that. But you're allowed to sort of express your annoyance,
your worries, your concerns,
in a constructive way. I think we would say, wouldn't we? Which is not always a Huddersfield Town fan trait, I'll be honest, including us. But I understand where the owner's coming from, and I get it. He's trying, like Dom says, he's trying to lead, and he's trying to get everybody to stick together and push in the right direction. But you kind of have to lead and do it on the field rather than just tell people to do it. It doesn't quite work like that, does it? And I mean, Poz's reaction was, well, you've been slightly hypocritical in not that I agree with Poz, but you know, he's sort of saying, well, you can't say this and then do that. And I kind of get that in some ways, but it just, I also understand where Kevin Nagel's coming from. He's just trying to get everybody, all the ducks in the right, pointing in the right direction, etc. Everybody rowing in the same direction. And you can't blame him for that, really.
No. I mean, I can't even remember if I've ever booed a Town performance before, but I think if I was there on Friday night, I'd have booed that team. I think it would have been the first time I booed a Town team because it was embarrassing, and the magnitude of it. Look, it is the worst result in Town's, well, since Accrington, isn't it? Really. I mean, I don't. There's been a couple of batterings now and again, but I mean that was. I mean, it was that performance. Yeah, Norwich away was terrible. Yeah, yeah. So it is a terrible one. I just think the fan base is in such a precarious position at the moment. He's got to be so careful. Not me. I don't have a season ticket anymore, do I? Because I live in France basically now, but like I know a lot of my mates got season tickets and just aren't bothered about turning up that much. They're not going to as many games because I don't know that it's a really, you look over Town's history and history does seem to repeat itself with this club, and we've got to be really careful. He's got to be really careful of kind of the way we go forward and the way to keep fans on board and stuff. And I think sometimes you just got to step back. Don't be tweeting, what was it, like probably like 7 hours after we've just been knocked out of the cup to bottom half National League side Tamworth.
Although the first tweet was perfect. It's the follow-up.
Yeah, the first, that's it. Don't engage
just know when to put the phone down. Yeah.
Don't engage with like angry fans.
Even with the first message, sorry to put in, it's just that that just feels like he was trying to appease both sets of fans, as now Sacramento fans are starting to get annoyed.
Yeah, they're after him and all as well.
He's tweeting about Town more than them. You know, even that, I don't go on. Just take the weekend off, Kev. That's what I would have done. Just forget about it.
It's funny though, Dom, because if he doesn't tweet, people will be tweeting him still, saying, "Where are you?
Can't win,
you're hiding." Yeah, I mean, once you open Pandora's box on Twitter and you start
There's an easy solution though. Just
delete
take
your
yourself
account.
off. Don't be on it. Don't be on it.
But,
Sometimes I wish I could just delete mine. But you can't. But he could. He doesn't have to be on there. He's putting himself on the parapet. He loves it.
I'm lucky. Joel will follow my rule one day in that when Town lose, I just tend not to go on until the day after. I just think if I put something, I'm just gonna get someone just having a go at me like I've played right midfield that game and had a shocker. So I mean, people we lose a game and Matt Cartwright gets it at the minute, and I just feel like sometimes I know he's in a position at the club where he's helping put the squad together, but we win 5 games and then we lose one, and people are like, Matt Cartwright out, and I just feel like sometimes going, he had a shit game in midfield, didn't he, mate? And you just feel like just like throwing that in sometimes, but you just need to know when to pick your battles and when to just sit one out, don't you, on social media, because you don't win many. I'll be honest, you don't win many on there. If you win one, then someone else will come along and just take it away from you. But fun and games on social media. I think that's all we've got time for, boys, this week. We've done a solid hour there. Thank you very much, Dom. Hopefully you feel better after your therapy session, and we'll put the bill in the post for that one. Joel, thanks for coming on. Solid debut. And Tom, always nice to see you, buddy, even if you are French these days with your flat cap and your mustache and your garlic and onions and everything going on around your neck. But good to see you. And we'll be back again this time week, and hopefully after another one.
There's a team that is dear to its followers. The colours are bright blue and white. They're a team of renown, they're the pride of the town, and the game of football is their delight. And all the while upon the field of play, thousands loudly cheer them on the way. Often you can hear them say, who can beat the town today? And then the bells will ring so merrily, and every goal shall be a memory. So town, play up and bring that cup back to Huddersfield. So town, play up and bring the cup back to Huddersfield.